Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. So for today's case, we are talking about another wannabe influencer's career gone horribly wrong, because today we are talking about Kelsey Turner. And oh boy, was she a piece of work.
That's why? What? That's why I'm still able to snap, because I'm not drinking.
I think this is the most politically incorrect I've ever been in an Uber. A bumpy ride at first. I didn't know if we were gonna get through it, but we made it. No, this lighting, I look like I have a mustache. I definitely do not. But I don't. I want some cereal.
Because Kelsey was probably the most entitled person you could come across. She always wanted to be center of attention. She was very passive aggressive, argumentative. And then one day in her 20s, Kelsey started up this influencer career. She started modeling on Instagram, and then things got more and more provocative until eventually Kelsey starts glamour modeling. She made the front cover of magazines. She ended up on red carpets. She was living up her dream in LA, and she even featured in Playboy. But then one day, slowly but surely, Kelsey's modeling career kind of started to come to an end. And she was desperate for money, and she was willing to do pretty much anything to get her hands on money. And things quickly turn very nasty very quickly and take a very deadly turn. So that's what we are going to talk about today, so let's jump in. And I just want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, and that is e.l.f. And if you have never heard of e.l.f. before, they are a refillable, plastic-free, natural deodorant company. And trust me when I say this, they really do work. I made the switch over to e.l.f. in 2021, and at the time, I was just fed up with my conventional deodorant. I was suffering with a lot of irritation on my underarms. I just felt like my pores were clogged. So I decided to switch to a natural deodorant, and I chose e.l.f. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit concerned. But it turns out that I didn't need to be concerned at all. I felt fresher using e.l.f. I had less irritation, my skin felt clearer, and I will never go back. And literally, just like last week, e.l.f. did something that I am so excited about, because they have launched a refillable roll-on deodorant. And I was so over the moon about this. I have been using the roll-on ever since it launched, and it is absolutely amazing. It is just as good as their stick deodorant. And the new roll-on is also incredibly easy to refill. You just take out your refill, insert it into the lid of the case, screw everything back together, and voila. And the roll-on is the perfect size for on the go. You can just throw it in your bag. There is also a range of cases, including this incredibly cute bee case. The roll-on deodorant has a no white mark formula, provides 24-hour protection, is fast drying, ultra lightweight, and I personally cannot say enough good things about this roll-on. I highly recommend that you check the roll-on out. But then if you just want to stick with the classic stick deodorants from e.l.f., e.l.f. have just launched this incredibly cute sunflower and butterfly case, which is just so gorgeous. And they have also launched 2 new incredible scents for their stick deodorant. So we have coconut and almond cream. Guys, when I tell you this smells incredible, trust me. Oh my God, it smells so good, I want to eat it. Don't eat it, but oh my God, it smells so good. I am definitely buying a load of backups to this scent, because wow. And then they also launched Sicilian Summer, which, as the name suggests, is very citrusy, but it's very fresh. It's just very summer. So if you like more of like a sweet, creamy gourmand scent, definitely go for the coconut and almond. But then if you like more of a refreshing citrus light scent, go for the Sicilian Summer. And I cannot recommend e.l.f. enough. I have been loyal to this brand since the moment I've tried it. I haven't even considered switching to a different deodorant brand, because e.l.f. works so well for me. e.l.f. also have a US store and a UK store. You can shop e.l.f. from wherever you are. And right now, e.l.f. are offering every single one of you an exclusive discount code of 20% off. All you have to do is use the code DK20 and you can get 20% off the whole e.l.f. website, but use it quick because this is only a limited time offer. So if you want to try the new roll-on deodorant, now is your time. Get it for 20% off. There is a link to the e.l.f. website in my description box down below, and using my code really does help out this channel because it lets e.l.f. know that you came from this video. So thank you again to e.l.f. for sponsoring today's video, but thank you to every single one of you watching right now, because truly without all of you guys, I wouldn't get opportunities like this. And now let's jump into today's case. Kelsey Turner was born on the 5th of May 1993, making her a Taurus. And she grew up in Jonesboro, Arkansas, where she lived with her parents Samantha and Christopher. And growing up, Kelsey lived a quiet, uneventful life. Her lifestyle has been described as a, quote, very country life. She would take care of the horses in the barn, would play out in the local fields. But from a very young age, Kelsey wanted more than that. Because there was one thing that Kelsey kind of became known for, and that is that she loved being the center of attention. She always wanted the spotlight on her. She loved to dance, she loved to sing and jump around and just basically do anything to have people's eyes on her. This also came with a few problems though. It's said that Kelsey could be very bratty. She was always getting into arguments with her mom. She was described as hot-headed, and she would just flip and get angry very, very easily. And it became apparent quite quickly that there was one thing that Kelsey became fixated on, and that was her appearance. As a child, she literally did want to be a Barbie doll. She loved doing her hair, her makeup. She would always be entering into local pageants. It is also said that Kelsey's mom, Samantha, was very similar to this. Samantha had done a lot of modeling throughout her career, and Kelsey idolized her mom and wanted to be exactly like her mom. She saw her mom being a model, and she was like, I want to do that. You can see pictures of the two of them on social media posing in very similar ways to one another, and her mom even commented on how much they were alike. So because of the inspiration her mom gave her, this is what Kelsey wanted to do for the rest of her life. She didn't want to spend her life in this small town, living this country life. She wanted the glitz and glamour. She wanted to be a model. So by the time we get to Kelsey in her 20s, she has just finished university. This is when she decides to leave her home state of Arkansas and move all the way down to California. And she would now try and pursue a life of fame and fortune. So we now get to the mid-2010s. I think it was around 2016. Kelsey has just arrived in California, and this is when social media really started to explode. The word influencer was heard more and more. I don't even know when that word started to become so regularly used, but yeah, 2016 was like the height of YouTube. People were becoming famous from being on YouTube, being on social media. People were starting to earn a lot of money from social media. And Kelsey saw this and she was like, this is exactly what I want to do. So from 2016 onwards, this is what she put all of her attention into doing. She wanted to become Instagram famous.
That's why? What? That's why I'm still able to snap, because I'm not shrinking yet.
I would break nails right before.
She focused on becoming an Instagram model, and at the start of her pursuit in becoming a model, she went for a very quite innocent, cute, country girl look. She went by the handle Arkan Sassy 1993, and she would post images of herself in sundresses and cowboy boots and holding a guitar or wearing a plaid shirt. But it didn't take long before Kelsey's photos started to turn more and more provocative. This was because Kelsey quickly learned that if she showed a little bit more skin or just anything that was a little bit more racy, she would get a lot more interaction.
I think this is the most politically incorrect I've ever been in an Uber. A bumpy ride at first. I didn't know if we were gonna get through it, but we made it. All right. This is some cereal.
So this is the direction that she started to go down because she was desperate to become famous, and she just followed the likes basically. She started to post herself in bikinis, in lingerie, of her tattoos on her inner thigh. Sometimes her photos she wouldn't even have any clothes on. And Kelsey became very much focused again on her appearance, but in particular her body. She referred to herself as a fitness model. And I use that term very loosely because she wasn't really a fitness model. She just kind of posed as a fitness model. She would post updates about her various surgeries that she had, like her boob job. And it wasn't long until Kelsey changed her profile username. So she's no longer Arkansasy 1993. No. She changes her handles to Bad Barbie. That is now what she is known as, Bad Barbie. So gone were the days of the cute and innocent, and now enters Bad Barbie. She was focused on like your stereotypical Barbie look. She had platinum blonde hair. She gained over 100,000 followers on Instagram, which is a lot of followers. That is not easy to do. And then it wasn't long until Kelsey turned into full-on glamour modeling. And this is now how she was chasing fame, appearing in glamour model magazines. She started going to various different photo shoots, and you can see this all over her social media. She actually did start to feature on the front covers of magazines. She graced the cover of Dream Vixens, 110, Fire and Ice, and Australia's Top Glamour Models. She also started attending various events, and she was on the red carpet, which I guarantee you she was loving, because she truly did think in this moment that she had made it. In 2017, she attended an event called Babes in Toyland, which is a big annual event in Hollywood where all sorts of models and social media influencers attend. And Kelsey really did think that she had made it. She felt famous. Like, she felt like her career was only going to go up and up and up. She was also earning quite a lot of money, so she was living out her dream. And to top this all off, to only make Kelsey's dreams come true even further, in 2017 again, Kelsey is 24 years old. She had been modeling on Instagram for about a year now. This is when Kelsey landed herself an opportunity with Playboy. And Kelsey was over the moon with this. I mean, for her, this was like as good as you can get. From this point going forward, Kelsey would refer to herself as a playmate and a Playboy bunny. She made herself feel very, very important. But there was one problem. Was this actually true? Was Kelsey actually a Playboy bunny, a playmate? And the answer to that would be no. Because did Kelsey make it onto the front cover of Playboy magazine in the USA? Nope. Did she move into the Playboy mansion and become a playmate? The answer to that question would also be no. And I don't quite know what you have to do to be classed as a Playboy bunny or a playmate, but let me just make it very simple. Kelsey was neither of the two. Instead, the opportunity that Kelsey got from Playboy was to feature in Playboy Italia, the Italian version of Playboy. But she wasn't even going to feature in the actual magazine. She was only going to be in a very small feature on the Playboy Italia website. And you can still see this online. You can see a little image of her on a random webpage that didn't get many visitors. So it's like, yes, she's still got an opportunity with Playboy, but let's be realistic. She's not on the cover. She's not a Playboy bunny. But if you listen to Kelsey, that is exactly what you would think, because she told every single person that she knew that she was a playmate, that she had been in Playboy. So it's like, no, you haven't. I mean, you technically have been in Playboy, but also not really. But it wasn't just Playboy that she did this with. No, she also did this with Maxim, because Kelsey would also say that she was a Maxim model. But again, was this true? And the answer to that would be no. Even more so than Playboy. Like, she did not feature in Maxim at all. What actually happened is that Kelsey entered into a public competition with over 30,000 other models. You can still see her profile entering into this competition, where one of the questions she answered was, "What is your secret talent?" And she replied, quote, "I'm actually a very talented R&B and blues singer." Whether that is true, I don't know. So did Kelsey win this competition? No, obviously not, because if she won the competition, she probably could technically be classed as a Maxim model. She actually ended up finishing in 8th place of West Group 9, so she didn't even make it out of her small regional group, let alone the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. She didn't even win her group. Like, She didn't do anything. And I'm not trying to take that away from her or anything, but she was literally making out to people that she was a Maxim model. And it's like, no, you weren't. You are delusional. That is what you are. But she just wanted to portray to other people that she was a Playboy bunny, that she was a Maxim model. And later on, when obviously this case happened and Kelsey has become pretty infamous, in the media, Kelsey is still referred to as a Playboy model, as a Maxim model. And it's like, no, she wasn't. I mean, Playboy model, you could technically use very loosely because she did feature on Playboy Italia, the website. But literally, one media outlet actually said that she was on the cover of Playboy. And I just thought I should do my bit here and clear up all of this misinformation because no, she wasn't. It's totally false. It's not even close. So things continue on like this for a little while. Kelsey actually does make some pretty decent money off of the back of the lie that she is a Playboy / Maxim model. She does some sponsorships on Instagram. She does some promotions at nightclubs. However, around a year or so later, something that can quite often happen in a very volatile, competitive industry such as modeling or social media, the work completely started to dry up. Kelsey was no longer getting invited to photo shoots or appearing on small magazine covers. She was no longer attending red carpet events. Instead, Kelsey was no longer Instagram famous and she kind of just became irrelevant. And this is when she now struggled a lot with her finances because she was pretending like she was this super famous Playboy model, Maxim model. So she was spending a lot of money. She had become accustomed to this luxurious lifestyle of being this little mini wannabe celebrity. And she also did the typical influencer thing where she portrayed that she was a lot richer than she was. So she would pose with like cars and designer clothes and they were rented or they weren't even hers or they were fake. But Kelsey wanted to keep this image up that she was famous, that she was rich, that she had all of these nice things. But she had bills to pay. She's also living in LA, which is very, very expensive. But not just that, there is one more thing that I need to tell you that might shock you, and that is that Kelsey has children. Yes, that is right. Kelsey is also a mom, and we don't know much information about her children. There weren't really any details online. However, what we do know is that in 2015, just before she starts her modeling career, she does have a baby, and we don't know anything about the dad. All we know is that Kelsey spent a lot of time in and out of short-term relationships, and I don't think the dad was in the picture. So Kelsey has a son, and then not long after giving birth to her son, she actually goes on to have another child, but she doesn't have full custody of her second child. She would only look after them on certain occasions. So Kelsey is struggling financially, and she definitely has at least one child in her full-time custody that she also has to pay for. So Kelsey is in desperate need of money. Her usual ways of making money through social media and sponsors and photo shoots and appearances, etc., that had all completely gone away. She was no longer making any money from social media or modeling. So she started to think of more creative ways to make money. So this is when Kelsey got her thinking cap on and she started thinking, what am I good at? Where can I earn money from? And then a light bulb went off in her head and she realized what she was good at. And that was manipulating men. Her grand plan of earning money was basically to meet up with rich men, manipulate them into giving her as much money as possible. And it was as simple as that. And it turns out that Kelsey was pretty good at this. She was very manipulative and persuasive. She knew exactly what to say to these rich men for them to give her money.
So me and Aaron, we ended up at that one spot that we were not supposed to go.
I don't know what we're doing here, man.
So Kelsey started going out for nights on the town. She would leave her son with a babysitter. She would then hook up with random men. She would flirt with them, charm them. Maybe there was a sexual element involved as well. We just don't know. All we know is that Kelsey would go out for a night on the town, charm these random rich men, and she would come back a lot richer.
Alright, so this day's come to it. I didn't want it to, but he's like, my family.
And Kelsey was like, this is perfect. Like, this is great. I'm going out having fun and earning money doing it. So she was doing this for a while. This is how she was earning money. But she was only earning just enough to scrape by. And that was not good enough for Kelsey, was it? She was used to the life of luxury. She wanted more. And then she went on to meet a man named Thomas Bashard. And this is where everything would change. Because it turns out Thomas was more than willing to be very generous with her. However, things would soon take a deadly and twisted turn from here. So who was Thomas Bashard? Well, he was currently 71 years old. He was born back in 1948. He grew up in Boston and came from a very educated family. Then after graduating high school, Thomas went on to attend medical school, trained to be a doctor before ending up being a child psychiatrist. And this is something that Thomas ended up doing for well over 40 years. He loved his job. He was loved by his patients. He was loved by his community. He went on to get married. He had children of his own. He was also known to be a passionate amateur magician. However, by the time Thomas ended up in his 50s, he did get divorced. He did end up going through a little bit of a rough patch. But then in 2002, he met a new woman named Judy. They quickly fell in love. They moved to California together, which is obviously where Kelsey Turner lives. And Judy and Thomas would now end up spending many years together. And there is one thing that Judy said about Thomas, and that is that he was a very generous person. He would always find ways to help people out financially. He was extremely charitable with his money. He would pay for things that his patients couldn't afford, like textbooks or medicines. He would even help them out if they couldn't pay their rent. And this all seems great, doesn't it? He seems like a really nice, charitable guy, very generous, helping those out that really need it. However, Thomas was also generous in some more shady ways. And this was all a secret from Judy. Judy didn't have a clue that her husband was like this. So what was Thomas's big secret? Well, this is that he liked to seek out younger women that he found attractive online and essentially just give them as much money as possible. Thomas liked to think that he was doing this in a charitable way. He used to seek out women that were more vulnerable, that could be homeless, for example, or were struggling to pay their bills. Maybe they were suffering with addictions, trying to turn their life around. However, on top of the charitable element that Thomas was giving these women money, there was also a sexual element to it. Because Thomas, he was known to spend a lot of his time viewing pornography online. I don't know if it technically was an addiction, but it was a very, very big part of his life. There were a lot of photos of nude women on his computer. And after watching this pornography, he would then seek out women online who were most of the time sex workers struggling with various different things, like financially, and he would offer to give them money. And I'm not sure what Thomas was getting out of this. It's not actually clear if he was ever meeting up with these women and exchanging money for sexual favors. Was he just talking to them online and then giving them money? Was there a sexual element online, like video chats or photos? We just don't know. We don't actually know if any sexual interaction was taking place. All we know is that he would talk with them online. What those conversations involved, again, we don't know. He would talk with them and then he would give them a load of money. And Thomas had been doing this for years. This is actually what led to his first divorce, because his first wife found out that he was doing this and he was now doing it again behind his second wife's back, Judy. And things go on like this for quite a while, and then we get to 2017. This is obviously when Kelsey was right in the middle of her wannabe influencer / famous modeling career. Thomas was in the middle of secretly funding women online. And this is now when Kelsey and Thomas interact for the very first time. And we don't know how this happened. We can only assume that Thomas was doing his usual thing of browsing the internet for women that he wanted to talk to and then give money to. And maybe he stumbled across Kelsey's Bad Barbie Instagram profile. So Thomas reached out to Kelsey and he offered to give Kelsey money just like he did with everybody else. And Kelsey was like, hell yeah, I will take your money, because she's in desperate need of money and she's pretty much had to do nothing to get this money. And this is how their somewhat relationship started. They would talk online quite often and Thomas would give Kelsey money. And obviously there was a strong sexual element to this. Kelsey would send nude images of herself to Thomas, and we can assume that he was paying for the privilege of this. However, unlike the other women that Thomas would interact with online, Thomas wanted to meet up with Kelsey in person. And again, we don't quite know exactly why this is. Maybe he found out that she was local and he could meet up with her, whereas maybe the other women were across the country and he couldn't actually physically meet up with them. So anyway, Kelsey and Thomas now start meeting up on a regular basis. Again, Thomas is doing all of this behind his wife Judy's back. He would take Kelsey out for dinners, he would buy her nice things. And at this point, Kelsey is around 24 years old and Thomas is around 71, so that is a huge age difference. And this next part has never been confirmed and it has always been denied by Kelsey, but people close to both Thomas and Kelsey strongly believe that this is when Kelsey and Thomas started up a sexual relationship. And again, if this is true, we can also assume that Thomas was probably also paying for the privilege of this. But as time went on, Kelsey became Thomas's biggest obsession. He stopped spending as much time speaking to other women online because he was so focused on Kelsey. He would now start to spend thousands of dollars on her. We are talking a lot of money. He was basically her sugar daddy at this point. There is no other way to describe Thomas. And this was all behind his wife Judy's back. She had no idea that her husband was doing this. But that was all soon about to change. And things are about to get even crazier from here. Because after Thomas had been funding Kelsey's lifestyle for a few months, guess what happens? Judy finds out. Because yeah, how is he keeping that a secret from her? It was inevitable, wasn't it? How was he going to keep this a secret from her for much longer? And again, we don't exactly know how Judy found out, but it's very possible that she was maybe innocently going through his phone and came across all of the text messages, conversations, phone calls between the two of them. Maybe she checked their bank account, saw that loads of money was coming out. We just don't know. It could be anything. But regardless, Judy finds out about Thomas's secret relationship with Kelsey. And the first thing that Judy does is she starts digging because she wants all of the information. So she starts going through their bank accounts and she finds out that Thomas has spent $10,000 on this random woman. So we are not talking small amounts of money. We are talking $10,000. That would be a shock to the system. And she confronted Thomas about this straight away. And Thomas tried to defend himself. He tried to just say that he was helping out a vulnerable single mom. And unbelievably, Judy believed him. She knew how generous he was, so it didn't seem that far-fetched that he was just helping out a single mom. So Judy was okay with it. Judy allowed Thomas to keep spending money on Kelsey because she thought that Kelsey was a vulnerable single mom who truly desperately needed the money. She wasn't exactly happy about it, but she allowed Thomas to keep funding Kelsey's lifestyle. So after this happened, Thomas has basically gotten the green light from his wife that he can spend as much money on this random woman as possible. So his spending on Kelsey now goes into overdrive because the next thing that Thomas did, and I truly cannot believe this, he signs a lease on a house in California for Kelsey and her son to live in. He's giving Kelsey a house. He is putting a roof over her head. He also signed a loan for a new BMW convertible. Kelsey's mom, Samantha, also moves into the LA home, and Thomas starts funding the lifestyle of Kelsey's mom as well. And it's crazy. It truly is. It's like, okay, there's one thing to be sending her money for various different things, but to give her a house, essentially, to put a roof over her head, it's absolutely crazy. And why did Thomas do this? Well, that is because Kelsey truly was a master manipulator. She actually had convinced Thomas that she was a vulnerable single mom. And if Thomas didn't fund her lifestyle, she would end up homeless with her 2 children. And I just want to point out that she technically only has custody of 1 child, but she's definitely using her other child to manipulate Thomas as well. So she always says she's a mom of 2. Like, she will have 2 children homeless, which is a lie. And things would go on like this for about a year or so. Thomas would constantly go over to the house, check on Kelsey and her mom. And apparently Kelsey and her mom Samantha would just be in the back garden sunbathing, and Thomas would apparently just stare at them. Whenever Thomas was around, Kelsey would just try and extort him for more money, more stuff, just like more. She would give him a list of groceries and say, I need these groceries. And she would say, oh, I need these clothes, or I need this handbag. And Thomas would just buy her everything. And eventually it got to the point where Thomas had spent over $300,000 on Kelsey, which he was taking straight from his 401k. It is insane the kind of money he is spending on this woman. And unsurprisingly, Judy got fed up with it, because even though she had said, okay, I understand she's a vulnerable single mom, she needs the money, this was getting out of hand. And tensions really grew between Judy and Thomas. Judy would apparently refer to Kelsey as, quote, the white trash whore. But then Kelsey was getting annoyed at Judy. So whenever Thomas was around, Kelsey would bitch about Judy to Thomas, which is just insane, because Kelsey was obviously worried that Judy would convince Thomas to cut her off, essentially. So Kelsey really did not like Judy. Kelsey once messaged Thomas saying, quote, that bitch is on the shit list with me, and if she ever gets me evicted, I'll kill her. And for starters, wow, she is threatening to kill Judy if Judy gets her evicted. And I'm like, how ungrateful is she? Like, regardless of what you think, Thomas is paying for her house. He's paying for everything. Yet Kelsey is talking about his wife like that. Wow, she's just so entitled. This is what I meant when I said she's literally the most entitled person you could ever come across, because Thomas is funding her life and she's just so ungrateful. So after she threatened to kill Judy, Thomas actually did realize, okay, this has gone too far now, and he needed to put an end to all of this. So with Judy's support and encouragement, after paying the rent on the house in California for over a year, this is when Thomas decided to cut Kelsey off. Thomas and Judy came up with a plan, because they knew that Kelsey was going to be a problem. I mean, she literally had threatened to kill Judy, and the plan that they came up with was quite honestly ridiculous, but it did work. So they said to Kelsey, listen, we're cutting you off. I'm not going to renew the lease on the house. Like, I'm not going to pay for anything anymore. But as a consolation prize, if you leave the state of California, we will give you another $300,000. Can you believe that? They literally are paying to get rid of Kelsey. They're literally saying, hey, we'll give you more money, just leave us alone. And Kelsey saw the $300,000 and she was like, that's a lot of money. So she took the money and she left. She left the state of California and she relocates to Las Vegas. So Kelsey is now living a life of luxury in Vegas. She's going for nights out. She starts working at events again. She's doing a bit of glamour modeling again. And obviously she's mostly living off the money that Thomas has given her to get rid of her. And Thomas and Judy truly believed that they had seen the last of Kelsey. But was that the case? Unfortunately, no. Because Kelsey realized that even though she was working a little bit now, doing glamour modeling and doing events, etc., earning money in the real world, a lot of money in the real world, is pretty difficult. And Kelsey was not prepared for that. She didn't want to work anymore. She had gotten used to Thomas. She had gotten used to Thomas paying for absolutely everything, and she was basically doing the bare minimum. She didn't want to have to work again for money. So who did she turn to? She went running straight back to Thomas. But this time, she tried different tactics. Instead of guilt-tripping Thomas into giving her money because she's this poor, vulnerable, single mom, she decides to blackmail him instead. This is when Kelsey came up with a whole host of lies. She said that she knew that Thomas was a pedophile. Kelsey said that she knew that there was a load of indecent images on his computer, and she was going to expose him and ruin his reputation. And just in case it's not obvious, none of this is true. Or at least there has never been any evidence even indicating that Thomas is a pedophile or even owns Indecent Images. So it's a whole load of lies. But Thomas, he was a child psychiatrist. He obviously worked with children his whole life. He had a very good reputation, and he was definitely worried because he didn't want the idea or lie out there that he was a paedophile, because we all know when you get labelled something like that, even if it's not true, it sticks. So Thomas gave in to Kelsey's blackmail and extortion, and he started sending her money all over again. So once again, Kelsey is living off of Thomas's money, and she can now live the life of luxury and not have to work. So once again, she starts buying herself a load of luxurious items. She even buys herself a new Mercedes car. And just to take things one step further, just to get a little bit of revenge on Judy, she decides to rub it in Judy's face. She sends Judy a message saying, "Thanks for taking the BMW from me. I look better in the Benz anyway," followed by 3 middle finger emojis. Kelsey truly did believe that she had Thomas wrapped around her little finger, and there is nothing that Judy can do about it, which she kind of does, because now that Thomas was paying for everything again, she managed to get another house out of him, but just in Vegas. So Thomas starts paying rent on a 4-bedroom house in Vegas for Kelsey and her son. However, what Thomas didn't know is that Kelsey invited a whole load of other people to live with her as well. But she did this in secret because she still wanted Thomas to think that she was this vulnerable single mom that was in need of money. So Thomas was not aware that other people were living in this house. So the first roommate that Kelsey invited to live with her for free was a woman called Diana. Now, Diana was a local bartender, and Diana did babysitting for Kelsey. She looked after Kelsey's son whenever Kelsey was out. There was also another roommate named Jeremy. And then on top of this, Kelsey got herself a new boyfriend. This was a man named John Kennison, who went by the nickname Logan. He was 27 years old. He was a former gang member, and he was known to be a bit of a bad boy. And Kelsey developed this relationship with Logan in secret because, again, she didn't want Thomas to know that she had a boyfriend, because I don't even know how to define Kelsey and Thomas's relationship, because he kind of is her sugar daddy again. But like, is there some sort of relationship between the two of them? I don't know. Is it a working relationship, a sexual relationship? All of this is a little bit murky. We don't actually know the details, but Kelsey is clearly worried that if Thomas finds out that she has a boyfriend, he's going to cut her off. And remember the boyfriend, this John Logan Kennison, because he's very significant in today's case. So this is what Kelsey's life is like for the next few months in Vegas. She's living this life of luxury off of Thomas's money. But this house that she's living in is a crazy house. It is chaotic. There are constantly parties going on, but not just that, fights would break out, huge arguments would spill out outside of the house. Police were called on a number of occasions to this house. And I just want to remind you all that Kelsey's son is living in this house. So this is not a good environment for her son to be living in. And occasionally Thomas would fly out to Vegas to like check out the situation, monitor the house, check on Kelsey. And unbelievably, Kelsey was able to keep the fact that she had all of these roommates, and she basically had this crazy party house a secret from Thomas. Because whenever he would come, Thomas would warn her. He would like call her up and say, "Hey, Kelsey, I'm coming over for the weekend." So this gave Kelsey enough time to clean up the house. And Thomas had no idea that she actually had this party house and all of these roommates, and he definitely didn't have a clue that she had a boyfriend. However, by the time we get to March of 2019, Thomas decides to pay a visit to Kelsey unannounced. And the situation that he walked into, he was not prepared for. And this is now when things take a very deadly and sickening turn. Because we get to Friday, the 1st of March, 2019. On this day, Thomas planned to travel to Vegas. He told his wife Judy that he would be back in 3 days, and everything seemed normal at this point. Thomas arrived in Vegas, and he arrived at the house that he is paying for, that Kelsey is living in, unannounced. And what he came across shocked him to his core, because he came across not only Kelsey living in the house and her currently 4-year-old son, but a whole host of other random people. And Thomas was furious. He called up his wife Judy straight away, and he said to Judy that Kelsey had been lying to him, that she was not a lonely single mom because she had all of these other random people living with her, and all of these other people are living in the house that he is paying for rent-free. So for the next day or so, Thomas stays at the house and he is arguing with Kelsey all of the time, saying that he is going to cut her off because of all of her lies. And then by the following evening, so it's now the 2nd of March, there was even more drama in this household because one of the roommates, Jeremy, he brought over his girlfriend to the house because obviously he's living there, and his girlfriend was blind drunk. And the drunk girlfriend started flirting with Thomas. And she was definitely Thomas's type. She was young and she was blonde. And then the drunk girlfriend and Thomas leave the house together. Don't know what they get up to. And I'm not sure about Thomas's feelings about all of this, but one thing we do know is that Kelsey was not happy. No, not at all. Kelsey starts ranting and raving, arguing with pretty much anyone, saying that the drunk girlfriend was, quote, trying it on with her man. And I'm like, what? Her man? She's got a boyfriend who's not Thomas. She was basically threatened that Thomas would find a new woman to spend all his money on. So later on that evening, everyone is just arguing with everyone. It really is the definition of chaos. Eventually, Jeremy and the drunk girlfriend that everyone seems to be arguing over, they do eventually leave. So the only people left in the house are Kelsey, Kelsey's 4-year-old son, Kelsey's secret boyfriend Logan, the other roommate Diana, and Thomas. And you would think that because the drunk people have left, you would think things would get better from here. But unfortunately, they don't. They now just get so much worse. Because later that night, Kelsey manages to get a hold of Thomas's phone and she starts going through all of his messages. And this is when she made a shocking discovery. She found messages between Thomas and her own mom, Samantha. Now, these messages, they were not sexual in any way, if that is where your mind has gone. Thomas had actually contacted Samantha on his own accord because he wanted to express to Samantha how concerned he was for Kelsey, that he felt like she was going down the wrong path. He thought that she might have had a drug problem. And he also expressed that he didn't think that Kelsey and the environment of that house that she was living in was the best environment for her children. And maybe the children should be taken off of her. So when Kelsey saw these messages, she absolutely lost it. She was like, how dare this man interfere in my life? And how dare he suggest that my children should be taken away from me? So another massive argument breaks out. But this time, Kelsey starts being incredibly violent towards Thomas. And remember that Kelsey's 4-year-old son is still there. So he is there witnessing all of this. But thankfully, the roommate, Diana, realized that, okay, a child shouldn't really be around this. And she quickly got the child out of that house and dropped him to a friend's house to be looked after. So at least somebody is thinking about this child. But when Diana returned, the arguments were still going on. But by this time, Thomas had actually run upstairs and basically barricaded himself into Kelsey's son's room to get away from Kelsey and her violent behavior. But this is when Kelsey turned to her boyfriend, Logan, and she was in a fit of rage. And she said to Logan, beat him up for me. And Logan did just that, no questions asked. He went upstairs, he barged his way into that room, and he started beating Thomas with a baseball bat. And he was just beating him over and over again with this bat, causing serious injuries. He was hitting him over the head. Thomas was bleeding. Eventually, the roommate Diana ran upstairs and she managed to break this up. She managed to get Logan away from Thomas. And Diana started tending to Thomas's injuries because they were serious. He was bleeding quite a lot. And she realized how much of a bad state he was in. He had a massive red and purple bruise on his temple. He was obviously bleeding. He probably had a concussion, and Diana realized that he needed to get to the hospital. So Diana helped Thomas downstairs. She helped him into the garage and she put Thomas in the back seat of Kelsey's Mercedes car. She then turns to Kelsey and says, you need to drive Thomas to the hospital. He needs to get to the hospital now, because it turns out that Diana herself, she actually couldn't drive. But Kelsey was not having this. She was now getting into an argument with Diana, and she just kept ordering Thomas back into the house. And this is when Thomas turned to Diana and said, quote, "If I go back inside, you know they're probably going to kill me, don't you?" But Diana didn't believe this. She was like, no, they're not killers. Yes, they're clearly unhinged, violent people, but surely they're not going to kill Thomas. So this is when Kelsey turned to a different tactic. She actually turned to Diana and said, "Why don't you go and clean up the blood in the bedroom? And when you're done, I'll take Thomas to the hospital." So Diana agreed to this. She went back into the house. She started cleaning up basically the crime scene, but she was willing to do anything to get Thomas to the hospital because that's where he needed to be. But after Diana went back into the house, this is when all hell broke loose. Because now Kelsey's boyfriend, Logan, turns up in that garage, and Kelsey ordered Logan to start attacking Thomas once again. Kelsey was saying things like, "Knock him out, let's get this done." And when she says, "let's get this done," I think it's safe to assume that the "this" means murder. So this is when Logan pulled out a gun and started pistol whipping Thomas over the back of the head. And Kelsey was on the sidelines the whole time, screaming her encouragement. She was also saying, "Come on, hit him harder, stop being a little bitch, finish him." Again, Kelsey is basically saying, murder Thomas. So Logan just kept going. He kept hitting Thomas harder and harder with the head of the gun, causing more serious injuries. Diana, who was cleaning up in the house, heard all of the commotion. She came rushing to the garage, hoping and praying that she could stop whatever was happening. But tragically, it was all too late. Logan delivered one blow after another, and the wounds to Thomas became fatal. And this is the moment when Dr. Thomas Bashard lost his life, which was absolutely horrible. For him to be beaten to death the way he was, nobody deserves that. And it was done in a twisted way as well. Kelsey being there, being basically a cheerleader the whole time. So after the murder of Thomas, everyone in that room, Kelsey, Logan and Diana, they were all in a state of shock. No one knew what to do. Logan was covered in Thomas's blood, so he started cleaning himself up. Kelsey then ordered Diana again to clean up another crime scene, to which Diana agreed because she literally did not know what else to do. And I've got to say, I really feel sorry for Diana in this moment. I really do think that she is just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I know right now that she's cleaning up a crime scene, but I can guarantee you she was probably scared for herself. She has literally watched two people murder somebody in cold blood. If she said, "No, I'm not cleaning up a crime scene," she probably thinks that they would turn on her and possibly murder her. So I do feel sorry for Diana, I really do, because she seems like she was just trying to help. I mean, she got the son out of the house, so he wasn't around, because if it wasn't for Diana, the 4-year-old son could have possibly witnessed a murder. She also helped Thomas. She helped his injuries. She tried everything that she could to get him to the hospital. So yeah, I really do feel sorry for Diana. So then Kelsey, after the murder, she comes up with a plan on what to do, because she is determined to get away with this murder. And this is when things begin to unravel even more, because Kelsey orders Logan to put Thomas's body in the trunk of her Mercedes car. In the Mercedes car that Thomas himself paid for. They then drive the Mercedes out to a remote area and they just abandon the car with Thomas's body in the trunk. Then afterwards, they return to the house, they pack up their belongings, they collect Kelsey's 4-year-old son, and now the 4 of them go on the run. So Kelsey, her 4-year-old son, her boyfriend Logan, and Diana. So we get to the following Monday and Thomas is due home. Judy is expecting her husband home. He was only supposed to go away for 3 days. So Judy is waiting at the airport for her husband, but Thomas doesn't show up. And she is very, very concerned. So she reports her husband missing. The police go straight over to Kelsey's home in Vegas because that is the last known location of Thomas. But when they get there, they find the property abandoned. It's empty, which is obviously very concerning. So this is now when the police set out to find both Kelsey and Thomas. And the search goes on for 3 whole days. But there is no sign of them, and Judy is going out of her mind until on the 7th of March 2019, a 911 call comes in because somebody has found an abandoned Mercedes car with a smashed in window. So the police, they go out to the Mercedes and sadly they find the body of Dr. Thomas Thomas Bashard in the trunk. So they have to inform Judy about what has happened. And she is so heartbroken and devastated. So obviously this now is a missing persons case turned into a murder investigation. And the police have one suspect, and that is Kelsey. And this goes on for a few more days, but the police have no idea where Kelsey is until finally this case takes a massive turn because a woman walks into a police station wanting to make a confession. And who is this woman? Well, it's Kelsey's roommate, Diana. So it turns out that over the last week or so, Kelsey, Logan, the 4-year-old son, and Diana, they had obviously been on the run and they had just been motel hopping. And Kelsey and Logan wouldn't let Diana leave. So Diana was pretty much a hostage. But finally, Diana managed to slip away. She felt incredibly guilty about what had happened. And as soon as she gets away, she goes straight down to the police station and she tells the police everything. So the police have a full witness statement. They now know who their murderers are. They just now need to find them. And amazingly, Logan and Kelsey managed to avoid capture for 2 more weeks. But finally, on the 21st of March 2019, the police managed to track them both down and arrest both of them. Both Kelsey and Logan were charged with murder and they were placed in jail awaiting trial. Diana was also charged with being an accessory to the murder, so she would have to face trial as well. And whilst Kelsey was in jail awaiting trial, there were so many delays, and the delays lasted for over 3 years. It took so long for the trial to happen, but it turns out that Kelsey kept herself busy in jail. Oh boy, did she. First of all, she fell pregnant and gave birth to a baby girl. Bet you weren't expecting that. Now, I have no idea how this happened. She was probably pregnant before she got put in jail. But again, I couldn't find any answers to that. And I don't know. Was it Logan's baby? Was it somebody else's baby? Was she allowed conjugal visits? I doubt it, but not impossible. So anyway, she gave birth to a baby girl whilst in jail. She also tried to rebuild her online profile behind bars. She appeared on all sorts of inmate websites, such as loveaprisoner.com, where she had a profile that stated, quote, "Hi, my name is Kelsey. I am 28 years old and I'm currently locked up in Las Vegas for a murder I did not commit. I am looking for pen pals and support as I make my way through my trial and whatever time I may receive." She also tried to revive her modeling career from behind bars. She had a fan account that would post her photos on Instagram. Kelsey even set up her own clothing company from behind bars called Bad Barbie LLC. It's absolutely ridiculous. Really ridiculous. And then finally, she also started shooting scenes for a reality TV show called Love After Lockup. And this is a reality show all about the love lives of prisoners. I have never heard of this show, but for those of you that may have heard of the show, may have watched it. Apparently there was a dating contestant called Max, which came with a lot of drama with it. And I don't know any more than that because I've never seen the show. But it turns out because Kelsey's crimes were so violent, the producers decided to cut her from the show and her episode, unfortunately, never aired. So then we finally get to 2023 and Kelsey finally went to trial. And her defense was basically to blame everything on the boyfriend. She blamed everything on Logan because she was like, he's the one that did the murder. I had nothing to do with it. But in the end, the prosecution showed that Kelsey was the driving force. Yes, she was not technically the one that murdered Thomas with her own hands. That was Logan. But without Kelsey, Logan wouldn't have murdered Thomas. He wouldn't have even started to beat him up. That was all Kelsey encouraging him, ordering him, cheering him on from the sidelines. So this is when Kelsey decided to take an Alford plea, which basically means she's not pleading guilty, but she agrees that there is enough evidence to find her guilty. Very confusing. And in exchange, she received 10 to 25 years in prison. Let's hope she serves the 25 years. John Logan Kennison did plead guilty to murder and was sentenced to 18 to 45 years in prison, which is obviously longer than Kelsey because he was the one that actually did carry out the murder. And then finally, Diana also pleaded guilty to being an accessory to murder. However, because she did turn herself in, because she agreed to testify, she was given 3 years probation. And why exactly did Kelsey do this? Like, why did she order Logan to murder Thomas is something that we will never know. Kelsey has never even admitted her role in this murder. So she's not exactly going to tell us why she wanted Thomas dead. A lot of people have questioned why Kelsey would murder Thomas when Thomas was funding her lifestyle. He paid for everything, which was the most important thing to Kelsey. But I think it just came down to the fact that Kelsey was worried that Thomas would cut her off and she would lose her money. And then it also enraged her that Thomas was talking to her mum behind her back. But either way, none of it makes sense. She should have just accepted that Thomas was going to cut her off, that she was no longer going to have any money, she would have to work for her money, and she should have just gone on to live the rest of her life with her children, because her one son, her 4-year-old son at the time of the murder, he was in her sole custody. So now, where is he? And I just hope that her son is okay. I hate the thought that he is suffering because of his mom's actions. But now I want to focus on the victim of today's case. In the aftermath of the murder, Thomas's friends and family have spoken about how devastated they are, about how much Thomas will be missed. And this is what Thomas's friends and family had to say about him. They described Thomas Bashard as a kind and caring man. He loved his family deeply. He was also incredibly passionate about his job as a child psychiatrist. He spent years going above and beyond for his patients. The community were absolutely devastated by his passing, as was his partner Judy, who had Thomas so cruelly taken away from her too soon. He was 71 years old. And that brings us to the end of today's case. As always, let me know your thoughts, theories, and opinions. And don't forget to leave me your case suggestions in the comments down below because I always want to know what you want to hear next. Thank you again to e.l.f. for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you all in my next one. Bye.